Hey everyone, welcome to Plants and Politics. I have an update to share about one of Trump's Capitol insurrectionists. It's time for an episode of Where Are They Now?
Matthew Bledsoe was arrested.
Patrick Montgomery was in court.
Jonathan Manapa will stay in federal custody.
No, I don't take responsibility at all.
So former Beverly Hills salon owner Gina Bisignano, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but she's pleaded guilty. Bisignano, as you may recall, was seen in photos and video at the Capitol. She was wearing a Louis Vuitton sweater. She had mascara streaming down her cheeks after being hit with tear gas. And she famously warned that no one was going to take away her Trumpy bear. Yeah. You remember her. And at a 2020 anti-lockdown protest, this is the same woman who shouted homophobic slurs at someone multiple times, asked if they were a guy or a girl, called them a Nazi. Yeah. And said, quote, "You're sick. I bet you had an abortion this morning." But she calls herself a Christian. Yeah. Good Christian. Anyway, before I get into the details about this charming woman's plea agreement, I wanted to share a few details that recently emerged about her experience in the legal system. According to a New Yorker article, they profiled 3 different people who took part in the January 6th Capitol attack. Bisignano was one of the 3. And they say that she sat for 2 weeks in an LA jail. It was kind of a mistake from what I gather, and that she wasn't given her prescription pills for Zoloft, which is an antidepressant. Okay, so I'm going to stop right here because I don't know her history, but I want to stop here to blast the medical system for being so willfully ignorant that they act like drug pushers instead of doctors and healers. They are constantly pumping middle-aged postmenopausal women full of prescriptions for antidepressants rather than giving them what their bodies are lacking, which is hormones. Middle-aged women aren't depressed because they have a Zoloft deficiency. They're depressed because their estrogen, progesterone, and or testosterone are deficient. Okay, so enough said. I'm going to set that aside. We'll rant about that another time, more later. I'm sure you guys can't wait. But anyway, back to Bisignano and her excellent adventure. So apparently she was woken up in the middle of the night at this LA jail. She thought that they were maybe letting her out. She thought that perhaps her family had posted bail and gotten her an attorney. Instead, she says that she was placed in shackles. She was placed on a bus, and that bus sat for 6 hours without moving. She was seated near or next to a man with a wonky eye, and apparently he kept telling her how pretty she was. That's fun. The bus finally took off, and Bisignano was taken instead of home. She was driven to San Diego, California, where they put her on a plane. And from there, she was flown to Oklahoma, where she would remain temporarily, at least, at a detention facility. It was an overflow facility, is what they said. So Bisignano says that she was in a room by herself, like the size of a basketball court, and she had only one pair of underwear. She had only the clothes on her back when they arrested her. She would wash them in a sink before she would, I'm assuming, air dry them, put them back on. The facility allegedly gave her this nasty blue mat to sleep on, which was damaged and ripped, and it had stuffing coming out of it. So she decided she didn't want to use that. It was too gross. So she curled up on a plastic cot, and she had no blanket. She allegedly asked for a blanket from the guard, and he told her that he would have to ask the captain. So presumably that request went into the circular filing cabinet, never got dealt with. She also claims that she contracted COVID for a second time while she was in jail. Apparently she had it already prior to that. And then after more than a month in various jails, Bisignano was released, But because she appears to be estranged from her family, evidently when she was arrested for January 6th, they called her an idiot and other colorful names. So Bisignano was set free on the streets. And this is in Oklahoma, remember, not in California where she's from. So she had no ID, she had no credit cards or cash, no means of transportation. Luckily for her, a woman who had heard about her situation through a friend at church showed up, took her in, and let her stay with them for a bit, with her and her family. Then she was later moved to the church lady's house, where she was given some oversized clothing to wear. Bisignano, again, had no clothing other than what she was wearing when she was taken to jail. So the article ended by saying, quote, Gina had not slept on a mattress in many weeks. In 2 big sweatpants tied at the waist, Gina stood in a boy's room in rural Oklahoma beside his bed under a WWE poster. She crawled in, pulled the covers over her head, and wept. So that was back in February. Fast forward to today, Bisignano has accepted a plea agreement, as I said. However, unlike the pathetic plea deals that we've become accustomed to seeing with, just one ridiculous misdemeanor charge, Bisignano actually pleaded guilty to almost all of the charges that she was hit with, including the felony charge of obstructing an official proceeding. That one crime comes with a maximum 20-year prison sentence. However, as you guys have heard me say, it's unlikely that's going to happen. What will likely happen is it will result in maybe 4 to 5 years behind bars, based on what we've seen with these other defendants. And it's also going to depend on her cooperation. So in addition to the obstructing an official proceeding charge, Bisignano pleaded guilty to civil disorder, disorderly conduct, entering restricted building or grounds, and physical violence in a restricted building or grounds. So the only charge she didn't plead to was the charge of destruction of government property. And that charge was due to her helping people up on a ledge so that they could break a Capitol window, which she and others ended up climbing through into the Capitol. But she herself didn't physically break the window. So I'm assuming that's why that was dropped. So the agreement was signed at the end of July, but it was kept under seal until just recently, until the week of Christmas. And this is, again, presumably because Bisignano is cooperating with the feds. So her agreement states that she will answer any and all questions. She will provide sworn written statements to the FBI as needed. She must also take polygraph tests. She has to participate in, quote, covert law enforcement activities as requested. So here's what I think that last part refers to. When Bisignano started attending anti-lock protests in California, she became friendly with some other pro-Trump people who have also now been arrested or at least implicated in the Capitol attack. One of the men with whom Bisignano was seen in photos and videos on January 6th is Daniel Rodriguez. Rodriguez, as you may recall from a January 6th update I shared recently about a new conspiracy case, he was arrested back in March, but his charges were recently increased with a superseding indictment charging him with conspiracy. He's also the man whose interrogation video was just released this past month. In it, he was seen and heard crying, and he admitted to tasering Officer Michael Fanone in the back of the neck, which of course caused him to suffer a heart attack. Well, Rodriguez and 2 other men went to Bisignano's apartment on or around January 10th. So this is according to that New Yorker article that I mentioned earlier. They released this information. So these men knew her well enough that they had her address. It also says that when they got to her home, one of the men unplugged her Amazon Alexa, and then he wrote in a notebook that he wanted to help her transfer her January 6th photos and videos any information to an external hard drive and then delete all of that evidence. Now, if that sounds familiar, it's because that happened in another case. So I don't know if these two cases are related, if this is one and the same person. I'm not sure, because what's really interesting is that the man who offered to help her, he hasn't been named yet. The indictments don't name him. And based on public reporting, he hasn't yet been arrested. Of course, now that these details emerge, now that everyone knows that Bisignano has been cooperating at least for 4 months, that could change. So I'll definitely keep you guys posted on that part of the story, as well as what happens with Bisignano. But for now, she remains under house arrest. She tried to appeal that decision in recent months. The judge rejected that request. And that could be due to the fact that, she's kind of snubbed the court. Actually, both she and her attorney, from what I'm reading, according to Law and Crime news outlet, the judge was kind of pissed off because Bisignano failed to show up for a December 14th status conference. She was just a no-show, and her attorney showed up late. So Judge Carl Nichols is the one overseeing this case, and he said, quote, "This is not the first time timely attendance has been a problem in this case. Defense counsel and defendant are admonished that additional failure to appear timely will be looked upon even more unfavorably." Probably not a good idea to piss off the one and only person who will determine your length of stay behind bars. So I hope she keeps doing it. Anyway, her next status conference is scheduled for March 4th. So we will know her fate sometime after that. But I also want to let you guys know that Bisignano actually commented on one of my previous videos about her. And she says that I have her all wrong, that I don't know anything about her, and that I've just got her wrong. I don't understand her. So I told her that she's welcome to come on the show. We can talk about it. She can share her side of the story, but she said that she can't until her case is settled. So the offer still stands. It stands for any January 6th defendant to come on the show, give their side of the story. We can discuss it. We can debate it. I promise to hear her out as well as anyone else. Anyway, I will let you guys know when I hear more. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Take care. I'll talk with you soon.